I hid behind the thick steel plate next to the test stand, watching helplessly as a monster blocked the muzzle of the railgun. That massive creature was covered in black iron-colored hard skin, scraping against the metal with a frantic friction. The usual hum of the testing equipment had stopped, and now the area was dead silent, except for the sound of flesh and hide grinding against steel. Its arm was terrifyingly thick, even thicker than my thigh. It clung to the railgun like a magnet, stuck fast. I stared at it, my heart pounding with panic, barely able to hold my gun steady. The barrel still held the electrical charge from the last shot, and that thing just took it head-on, not budging an inch. Suddenly, the cannon fired, a projectile traveling at several times the speed of sound, normally capable of punching through tank armor. In that instant, a blinding flash completely engulfed the monster's body, flames shooting skyward. I thought for sure it was gone, not even bone dust left. But when the fire cleared, that thing was still standing there, not even moving. That black skin was completely unharmed, and it was still suctioned to the muzzle. I stared wide-eyed as the bones on its back rotated like gears beneath that thick hide. Click, clack, the sound was crystal clear. The monster slowly turned its head, locking its gaze on me. I saw that its face had no eyes. Instead, there were rows of small holes, neatly arranged along its cheeks. It was breathing there, and with each inhale, those holes puffed out gray smoke that hung in the air, reeking horribly. Its appearance was beyond my comprehension. I shuffled back a bit, looking for a safer spot, my boots scraping loudly on the concrete floor. It shifted, and the holes on its face emitted a grating, steel-bending creak with the movement. Its motions were terrifyingly slow, but each one carried a heavy, oppressive weight. That cannon shot had hit it, and it hadn't even broken its skin. Instead, it clamped tighter onto the railgun's rails, as if savoring the massive impact. I watched its bones keep adjusting, the muscles under that hard skin monstrously large, each pulse making the air vibrate. Staring at it, my palms were slick with sweat. I had no idea how to deal with this. It was just staring at me now, and I barely dared to breathe. It felt like watching a deadly machine slowly powering up, changing every second, becoming harder to handle with each moment. This godforsaken place now held only the two of us, and the railgun it had latched onto. Its body was still smoking, that gray smoke drifting over with a burnt metal smell. I pressed tight against the steel plate, feeling my back soaked through with cold sweat. What this monster was, no one could say, but it was determined to block this spot, and nothing was going to move it. We were just collecting data. This railgun was set up in the middle of a sand pit, surrounded by rows of sensors. The officer left us here to measure some electrical feedback, everyone busy with their tasks, no one thinking it was a big deal. The equipment recorder sat in the sheet metal van full of instruments, headphones around his neck, reciting those dull voltage numbers. The area was so quiet you could hear the wind, just the soft rustle of sand blowing across the test stand. I kept my eyes on that big machine. The barrel was long, darkly pointing at the distant baffle. I watched the metal plate on the side of the barrel twist, slowly burrowing inward. It was like some invisible little thing was forcing its way through that solid steel. A sticky, black iron-colored substance oozed out from where the rails connected. It flowed like black mud, trickling down the barrel. I rubbed my eyes, thinking I was seeing things. The guy at the control panel bent over to wipe an oil spot off the screen. The moment his fingertip touched it, that thick glass collapsed like it had been melted by fire, the whole screen instantly turning into a twisted lump of scrap. He jumped back in fright, and I rushed over to look. The barrel had sprouted several tentacle-like things, thick and hard, gripping the gun tightly. They writhed slowly along the barrel, making a grinding, teeth-clenching sound. The officer's voice crackled over the radio, telling us to move in and check it out. We put on our protective gear and trudged back to the gun mount. The gravel underfoot sizzled from the black slime dripping off the creature. I leaned in for a closer look. That last cannon blast hadn't managed to break its arm. The arm was now completely fused with the metal of the railgun. It had no fur, and its skin didn't feel soft at all. It was a cold, hard material, looked like iron, but felt like dried, tough hide. Bumps covered its surface, each one pulsing gently. I hesitated for a long moment, then lifted my boot and kicked its side hard. It felt like kicking a solid wall. My toes went numb from the impact. It didn't react at all. Those breathing holes kept opening and closing rhythmically. Each time they opened, a wisp of gray smoke seeped out. I watched the slime spread across the metal surface, corroding the once smooth gun mount into deep pits. The thing just sat there, motionless. The officer shouted from behind, asking what I saw. I opened my mouth, but my voice got stuck in my throat. There was no way to describe it. It looked like a metal freak crawling out of the earth, draining the last bit of life from this railgun. The few of us stood around it, guns in hand, but no one dared to fire. The air was thick with that strange smell, the stench of red-hot metal doused in cold water. I watched the slime flow more and more, dripping from the gun mount into the dirt, scorching the sand into black scars. This thing was right in front of us now, and the heavy pressure made me hold my breath with caution. This step of contact left us in a dilemma, as if the creature was turning the entire gun mount into part of itself. How should we deal with this deep physical fusion next? Someone fired a shot. The sharp crack echoed through the empty testing ground, sounding especially jarring. I watched the bullet fly and hit the creature's shoulder dead on. Its skin was terrifyingly hard. The bullet bounced off like it had hit a thick iron plate. Sparks flew everywhere, and one ricochet hit the control box nearby, sending a string of sparks across the blue-lit panel with a crackling sound. The creature snapped its head around. The way its neck twisted was horrifying, making a grinding noise like steel cables being yanked tight, which sent chills down my spine. The hand blocking the gun muzzle suddenly retracted. The force was immense, warping the metal structure at the front of the railgun. It shoved its fingers straight into the acceleration rail inside the barrel. I heard the sound of metal bending, a sharp, piercing noise like nails on a chalkboard. The two steel rails, each weighing several tons, were crushed between its fingers. Sparks sprayed out like crazy, flying through its fingers and landing on the ground, making the gravel smoke. The creature stomped its foot, and the concrete foundation beneath it cracked instantly. The entire gun mount tilted to the side, and with a loud crash, the metal support pillars under the base were bent by its weight. The supply crates nearby took the hit. It slammed sideways, flattening several steel boxes full of tools and parts like they were paper. Metal parts flew everywhere, pitting the testing ground's walls with small dents. I scrambled back, my feet crunching over broken metal and crushed parts. The officer yelled for us not to cluster together, but the place was littered with metal debris, leaving nowhere to hide. The creature moved again. Its hand twisted inside the barrel, turning the railgun's core rails into a twisted mess. The sound of metal snapping came one after another, echoing across the open area. I could even see the thick steel plates deforming like putty under its fingers. With a hard yank, it tore the mangled rail section out of the gun mount and flung it to the ground with a heavy thud. My comrade tried to flank it from the side. He raised his gun and fired at the joints on the creature's leg. Bullets flew out one after another, leaving white marks on its tough hide but not even scratching the surface. The creature swung its leg, and the long, smoking rail debris whipped around like a lash. It moved with shocking speed, shredding the protective plate my comrade had raised in front of him. The plate flew off and slammed into the wall behind, leaving a deep dent. The air was thick with the smell of burning metal. The monster paid us no attention at all, frantically tearing apart the heavy equipment. Each strike carried terrifying force, turning that multi-billion-dollar national treasure into a toy in its hands. I rolled back a few times, hiding behind another steel plate. This plate was thick enough to stop a tank shell, but now, as I touched it, I could feel it trembling slightly. Every time the monster smashed the gun mount, the ground shook, as if a heavy hammer was pounding the earth from below. I heard a sound coming from the monster's throat, like gravel rattling inside a metal bucket. The black iron-colored skin covering its body slowly cracked from the impact. Glittering things emerged from the cracks, like molten iron fresh from a furnace, still glowing hot. One of its feet stepped on the wreckage of the gun mount, and with a hard push, it pried the entire multi-ton metal base loose, tilting it to the side. I just stood there, raising and lowering my gun. Shooting it was useless. Bullets bounced off its body like tickling it. It was completely absorbed in dismantling the machine. The sound of twisting metal and the suffocating wave of heat filled the entire testing ground. The torn-off rail was still flickering, electricity crackling and jumping, occasionally spitting sparks that landed on its body and were absorbed directly by its strange skin. Its movements grew faster, no longer just simple dismantling but taking on a destructive rhythm. Each punch landed precisely on stress points, shattering the sturdy structure. The metal let out a heart-wrenching wail, like something alive was screaming. Its hand reached deep into the cannon's muzzle again, this time pulling out the power circuit connected by cables. Those cables writhed in the air like snakes, grabbed by its hand and snapped off. The surrounding lights flickered wildly, brightening and dimming, casting the monster's silhouette in and out of view. I stared at its faceless head, those tiny holes opening and closing constantly. It seemed to be sensing everything around it this way. Every time the light came on, I saw it had moved a little closer. It used the remaining wreckage of the railgun as a shield, casually shoving it toward our cover. That multi-ton mass of metal debris came roaring toward me. I lunged sideways, and the steel plate smashed the spot where I'd been hiding into fragments. Rocks and metal shards flew everywhere, hitting my protective suit with sharp pain. The monster then stepped over the wreckage toward me. Its huge feet left deep craters with every step. It moved slowly, as if savoring the mountain of scrap it had created. I hid behind another broken wall, gasping for air. This place was no longer safe. The railgun's coolant began to leak, a green liquid spreading across the ground. When it touched the monster's skin, it hissed and gave off a blinding white smoke. But the monster didn't care. It walked straight through the liquid. The fluid didn't burn it. Instead, it was absorbed by the patterns on its skin. I watched its black skin grow brighter, like polished steel. The sound of metal snapping never stopped, as its joints constantly adjusted to harness this immense destructive power. It no longer looked just like a monster. It seemed like a living, evolving war machine. It casually grabbed a piece of cannon barrel fragment, wielding it like a club, and swung it toward me. The sweep kicked up a gust of wind that sent all the dust on the ground into the air, blurring my vision. I felt the foundation of this place trembling, as if it might collapse at any moment. The monster's goal was clear. It wanted to crush every metal structure here. I watched it drive the fragment into the ground, using it as a pivot, then leap up and slam down hard. At that moment, it felt like an earthquake. A huge crack split the testing ground's floor, and the force sent me flying, crashing heavily into the other end of the sand pit. My helmet had cracked open a seam from the impact earlier. Through that crack, I could still see the railgun that had already been torn apart beyond recognition. And that monster stood amidst the pile of scrap metal, like a king who had conquered his foe, scanning its surroundings. The black patterns on its body had all turned a dark red, glaring and unsettling. It was waiting for the next target to appear, waiting to continue this chaotic, violent dismantling. I lay sprawled on the sandy ground, the smell of dirt mixed with the stench of scorched metal churning my stomach. But the monster gave me no chance to catch. My breath, its massive body began to move again. Each step it took was steady and deliberate, as if it had already claimed this place as its territory. The surrounding metal frames continued to collapse, the crashing sounds ringing in my ears. As it moved, it used its saw-toothed hand to smash everything in its path into scrap. The motion was simple and brutal, yet no one could stop it. I stared at its eyeless face, the oppressive weight of its presence making the very air feel frozen. We were no match for it. We were merely spectators, watching this ironclad monster slowly destroy all our efforts. That suffocating, scorching heat spread along its path, engulfing the entire testing ground. The monster stopped moving. It released its grip and withdrew from the mangled barrel of the railgun. The air around grew unbearably heavy, thick with the nauseating stench of burnt metal, a mix of molten steel and its own peculiar, fishy odor. Hidden behind a steel plate, I stiffened, my eyes fixed on it. It now crouched motionless amidst the wreckage of the gun mount. The black iron-like skin on its body began to change. The deep black slowly faded, replaced by a rusty dark red. It looked like a discarded tin can left to soak in acid rain for a decade, exuding an aura of decay and death. My comrades and I huddled behind cover, not daring to breathe. Seeing it like this, we all thought it was on the verge of collapse, or perhaps its armor couldn't withstand the internal damage from its earlier rampage and was crumbling on its own. I slowly leaned out to take a closer look. The ground was covered in splatters of black, viscous fluid. That fluid had changed. Earlier it had been smooth like oil, but now it was beginning to solidify, forming a thin, grayish-white crust on the surface. The crust trembled slightly, as if something alive was trying to break through from underneath. Stranger still, the collapsed metal components around it, wherever the fluid had touched, had all changed color. The once silver-white steel was now stained a rusty red. I reached out and touched a nearby iron pillar. The rusty red spots felt hot and soft, not like metal at all, but like a piece of scorched pork stuck to the steel. I swallowed, my throat as dry as if I'd swallowed sand. The place was deathly quiet. Apart from the faint sizzling of the fluid on the ground, there was no other sound. The monster crouched there, its head lowered, impossible to tell whether it was resting or waiting for the next disturbance. The electric crackling from the friction of its bony plates was gone, replaced only by a heavy, bellows-like breathing. The small holes on its face had closed, leaving it looking like a smooth, featureless iron mask. I glanced back at the commander. He was staring intently too. No one dared to speak, no one dared to move. We all hoped this thing would just die right there. But something felt off. The fluid on the ground was pooling thicker, not flowing downhill, but crawling up the iron frame of the testing platform like it had a life of its own, slowly enveloping the pile of scrap. The fluid spread at an agonizingly slow pace. If I hadn't been watching the marks closely, I wouldn't have noticed it moving at all. The smell in the air grew stronger, overpowering even the scent of gunpowder. It wasn't just the smell of burnt metal. It was more like something fermenting, sour and acrid, stinging the eyes and bringing tears. I watched the fluid crawling over the iron frame, each point of contact twitching slightly, as if greedily absorbing the residual heat from the gun mount. The once gold machine, now wrapped in this substance, looked like a mass of growing flesh and blood. I stared at the monster's back. The dark red skin on its body was still changing color, deepening into a dark brown. I shifted slightly, trying to adjust my position, and accidentally nudged a piece of scrap metal beside me. The metal slid and clinked sharply against the ground. The creature abruptly raised its head. It remained crouched, but the heavy, deathly aura from moments ago vanished in an instant. Staring at its eyeless face, I felt an indescribable chill. Though it didn't move, the sensation it gave off was as if the air in this place had turned cold all at once. The earlier illusion of it falling apart was completely gone, replaced by an even more oppressive, heavier dead silence. The place was terrifyingly quiet, so quiet I could hear my own heart pounding against my chest. I didn't dare move again, only stared fixedly at it. It had changed. Now it was like a heavy machine powering up, waiting to crush everything here into dust in the next second. I could only hope it hadn't noticed me yet, but the feeling of being watched crawled up my spine to the top of my head. This thing wasn't dead at all, it was just waiting for us to show the slightest opening. The dark red shell cracked open, its originally hard carapace, like dried meat boiled too long in a pot, began peeling off layer by layer, revealing something deeper and brighter underneath. The creature's body grew taller, its previously hunched shoulders suddenly expanding, sprouting extra joints. Those joints resembled two massive iron shears, jutting stiffly from its spine, long and gleaming. It wasn't dead at all, it was molting. The thing that had been crouching there moments ago now swelled to nearly twice its size. The muscles on its back bulged in thick slabs, covered in still-hot, rust-colored iron patches. I stared at its back as those scissor-like joints flailed wildly in the air, emitting a sharp, grinding hiss like a whetstone. Now it looked like a monster pieced together entirely from iron plates, heat radiating from every part of its body. The joints on its back began to glow. The light was a bluish purple, racing along the patterns on its skin and casting the surrounding scrap piles in eerie hues. The slime that had been clinging to the metal moments ago now stood upright under this light, like countless tiny needles. The entire testing ground buzzed with the crackle of electric currents. It had absorbed all the residual energy from the railgun. Every inch of its body crackled with blue sparks. I watched as its originally human-like fingers began to fuse together. The 5 digits pressed tightly against one another, flesh and bone forcibly compacted into a massive, serrated lump of metal. It no longer had fingers. Its hand was now a huge, spiked iron hammer. It raised its hand and slammed it hard into a nearby support column. The impact shook the entire testing building. The tremor wasn't like an earthquake, more like someone had planted a bomb directly beneath the column. The support pillar shattered, the once solid concrete and steel crumbling like biscuits under its blow. The ceiling groaned and creaked as the metal framework twisted. It didn't stop, delivering another punch, this time directly into the main wreckage of the gun mount. The massive metal structure, weighing dozens of tons, was sent flying by the impact, crashing heavily into the distant perimeter wall. Bricks and stones flew everywhere, dust instantly blanketing the area. I covered my head, trying to shrink behind the steel plate to avoid the flying debris. The vibrations were overwhelming, each strike transmitting through the ground to the soles of my feet. This thing was rampaging, destroying everything in its path. It no longer cared what was around it. It was determined to smash every inch of this place to pieces. I could even feel the wind it generated as it tore through the scrap piles, a hot gust sweeping over my helmet and stinging my face. It turned around. The 2 iron shear joints on its back gleamed coldly under the lights. It looked in our direction, the fine pores on its face opening once more. This time it didn't spew smoke, but emitted a low, thunderous hum. The sound was deafening, threatening to burst my eardrums. I pressed my hands to my ears, but the hum still vibrated through my bones into my skull. With another swing of its arm, the iron shear joints whipped up a gust of wind, flipping over a truck behind our barricade. The truck rolled several times before crashing into another wall, its cargo compartment smashed to pieces. It now moved like a demolition machine, impossibly fast. Every punch, every swing carried the momentum to level this place. The cables that had been sparking moments ago were now all drawn to its body. Its entire form glowed blindingly bright, like a moving electric furnace. It was striding over there. With each step it took, the ground caved in deeply. Its body proportions were now grotesquely distorted, its arms so long they nearly dragged on the ground, while the pair of scissors on its back continued to snap open and shut. I watched as it flattened everything in its path. Steel frames, tables, chairs, even the once smooth ground all reduced to fragments under its hands. When it reached the wall where I had just been hiding, it raised the metal lump in its grip and smashed it mercilessly into the corner. The wall shattered instantly, the rebar inside snapping apart. The thing didn't even check if anyone was inside. It was pure destruction. There was nowhere left to hide. It had demolished every possible cover. Its metal-clad hands were tangled with torn cables and shards of metal, making it look like a monster covered in barbs. As it smashed, it emitted that dizzying, buzzing noise. The slime was still growing wildly, oozing from every footprint it left behind, forming pulsating mounds on the ground. I watched as it turned toward me, its eyeless face locking onto my position. It stopped less than 10 meters away. I could see the patterns on its body clearly, pulsing with each heave of its chest. A chest that wasn't alive, just a mass of shifting metal plates. With every breath it took, the glow on its body intensified, as if gathering some greater energy. That energy pressed down on it, making even the surrounding air feel heavy. I couldn't run. Behind me was a dead end, and in front of me was this monster. It casually tossed a twisted piece of metal aside, and the shard embedded itself into a nearby pillar like a dart. The motion was so effortless, as if it were just discarding trash. It was slowly advancing, each step landing with deliberate weight. I could feel the ground trembling, as if the testing site might collapse at any moment. Thin, elongated metal wires sprouted from its neck, writhing in the air like tentacles. Where they brushed against the walls, deep gashes appeared instantly. Every part of it now seemed designed solely for destruction. The joints, the metal clumps, the scissor-like structures on its back, all screaming that this thing was in a state of complete, unchecked frenzy. It needed no reason. If it saw metal, if it saw obstacles, it would tear them apart. I curled up beneath the broken wall, trying to make myself as small as possible. The air was filled with the sounds of metal grinding, colliding and snapping. The monster loomed above me, its shadow swallowing me whole. The stench of scorched metal wafted from its body, burning my nostrils. I didn't know what it would do next, only that it wasn't done yet. It treated this ruin as its playground, systematically annihilating everything in sight. Watching its relentless drive to crush the world, my unease grew heavier. It had no awareness of what it was doing. It was just unleashing raw, violent force. And in the face of that force, we were nothing more than bugs to be crushed. It paused, staring at the wreckage of the artillery mount it had demolished, now completely deformed. It reached out, lightly touching the debris as if confirming its total ruin. At that moment, the blue-purple glow on its body flared again, shaking the entire testing site violently. It ignored me, its focus entirely on the scrap metal littering the ground. It was going to tear it all apart, compress it into a single ball of wreckage. That sheer, unadulterated urge to destroy pressed down on me with a weight heavier than death itself. It stood right above me, those massive scissors on its back, waiting silently for its next wave of madness. Nearby, the backup generator truck began leaking fuel. Drops of liquid sizzled as they hit the scorching metal ground, filling the air with a continuous hiss. No one had the time to care about that. Everyone was fixated on the monster. With every strike, the ground caved in deeper. My hands shook violently, my cracked visor distorting my vision. There was no pattern to its movements, just pure, relentless force, each blow aimed at leveling everything. It twisted the artillery mount's thickest support beam like a wet towel, the screech of metal piercing my ears. Shards of flying debris grazed my helmet, embedding themselves deep into the wall behind me. A comrade lost his mind. He stood up and unleashed a frenzied barrage at the thing. The muzzle flashes illuminated his deathly pale face. The bullet struck the monster, producing nothing but a spray of sparks. He was shouting something, but his voice was completely drowned out by the deafening crashes of the monster smashing the ground. The creature didn't even turn around. It merely flicked the iron scissor-like joints on its back, sending him flying instantly. He slammed into a steel frame, which immediately bent and twisted with a sickening screech. I watched him slide down, motionless, and clenched my jaw so hard my teeth ground together. My hands gripped the rusted iron railing beside me, fingers wedged deep into the corroded gaps. I didn't pull them free, just left them jammed there. The skin on my knuckles scraped raw, but I couldn't feel the pain. The collapsing wreckage around us roared, the crushing pressure closing in from all sides. My eyes locked onto the backup power unit, the only objective now. If that thing kept smashing unchecked, the whole building would come down sooner or later. I grabbed a large, heavy yellow warning sign from the ground and slammed it against the railing. The deafening clang reverberated through the metal space. The monster froze, its eyeless face snapped up toward my direction. The electric crackling from its bony plates sharpened into a piercing whine that drilled into my skull. I tossed the sign aside, gripping the base of the wall with both hands, and hammered the metal railing with everything I had. Once, twice, 3 times. The metallic clanging echoed endlessly through the testing grounds. I watched as its massive body turned, its wire-like tendrils writhing wildly in the air. It was staring at me, that eyeless face fixed in my direction. Only one thought burned in my mind: lure it away. Stop it from tearing everything apart. Leave the power unit for it. The flickering blue-violet glow from its bony plates cast shifting shadows on the walls. I dropped everything weighing me down and bolted. The path underfoot was littered with rubble and snapped steel cables, every step a gamble not to trip. The monster moved. Each of its footsteps hammered against the ground like a drumbeat against my chest. I ran until my lungs were on fire. The creature followed, each step sending violent tremors through the ground behind me. Its twin iron scissor joints clashed in the air, sparks raining onto my protective suit, burning tiny holes. I sprinted toward the power unit, still humming with overloaded current. Reaching the back of the vehicle, I turned for a split-second glance. The thing loomed less than 20 meters away, a mountain of destruction bearing down. I ignored it, tearing open the panel on top of the power unit. Inside, a tangled mess of wires coiled like snakes. I didn't know which one was the main switch, so I yanked out every visible cable. This thing conducted electricity. I needed it to take the full brunt of the current. With a sharp tug, sparks erupted. The arc scorched my gloved hand, but I didn't hesitate. I grabbed the thick, still-smoking cables and waited for it to come. It arrived. A gust of wind reeking of burnt metal and rust swept past me. It raised its massive, club-like metal hand, poised to crush me. I hurled the cables at its feet and threw myself sideways. My body slammed into a corner, cracking my elbow guard. I didn't look, just heard the thunderous crash as its fist obliterated the power unit. Then came the explosion. The unit detonated, blue electric fire erupting like a bomb, engulfing the monster in an instant. The electric roar drowned out everything, a shriek so piercing it deafened all else. I lay there, watching it convulse in the current. Smoke billowed from its body, as the dark red carapace burned crimson under the surge. Its frame jerked violently, metallic snapping sounds erupting from within. Trapped in the web of thick, crackling electricity, it stood immobilized. Gasping for air, I shook off the shattered remnants of my protective gear. This thing can't move now. It's covered in crackling sparks of electricity. I'm lying on the ground, watching the blue light cast everything around in a ghastly pallor. The back of my hand is swollen, covered in red burn marks, but I don't have time to look. I just keep staring at it, watching as the current slowly tears its body apart. My decision is made here. Either it burns to death, or it survives and tears me to shreds instead. The monster writhes in the electric current, the scissor-like joints on its back still snapping open and shut, each movement accompanied by the heavy, slow clang of metal, like a death rattle. It can't move now, but it's not dead yet. The pile of scrap at its feet is still there, the current still coursing through its body into the ground. I'm pressed against the corner, drenched in sweat, watching the blue light gradually dim watching it struggle feebly. This place is already in ruins. The two of us, along with the shattered remains of the power truck, are crammed into this small space. It's not over for it, and it's not over for me. I grab a broken steel rod nearby, gripping it tightly. If it charges now, this is all I've got. Useless as it is, I have nothing else. I watch it, every spasm making the building tremble. I'm just waiting to see if the current will finally burn it out. Every move I make now is like walking on a knife's edge. I stare at it, and it feels like it's staring back through the light. Even though it has no eyes, I can feel its gaze. This thing is relentless, absolutely relentless. The metal plates on its body slowly blacken in the current, the rusty smell fading, replaced by something like burning plastic, so acrid it makes me want to vomit. But I hold it in, pressing my face into the gas mask, never taking my eyes off it, until the last spark of electricity fades, until the blue light vanishes from its body. I still don't move, the steel rod clenched so tight my knuckles are white. I just keep watching, waiting for it to go completely still. The air is thick with that nauseating stench of burning, seeping through the gaps in my mask, sapping the last of my strength. I watch as its massive frame, amid the wreckage of the power truck, slowly, inch by inch, collapses. Every second feels like a year. Every second, I'm waiting to see if it'll get back up. My heartbeat pounds in my chest, heavy and clear, echoing in the dead silence of the testing grounds. It's not dead yet. It's still breathing, that bellows-like sound returning, jarring in the ruins. I keep staring, waiting for its next move. Even if this building collapses, it won't be finished. The steel rod in my hand is my only hope now. I wait here until the light is completely gone, until that heavy, labored noise finally stops. Only then will this fight truly begin. I watch the monster. I watch this crumbling hellhole. There's no way out. I can only stay here, staring at it, waiting to see how it stirs back to life in the dark. It moves. Its joints creak. It's crawling out slowly. I don't move. I stay where I am, gripping that useless steel rod, waiting for the final explosion. Right now, I'm not thinking about anything. I just want to see how much fight this monster really has left. The thing pulls itself out of the wreckage. Its metal plates are still steaming, some parts charred black, revealing red, sinewy structures beneath. Its eyeless face turns toward me. I'm pressed against the wall, the broken steel rod clenched in my hand. It ignores me, steadying itself, the massive scissor joints on its back snapping shut and plunging straight into the concrete floor. The impact sends chunks of debris flying, as if the ground has been plowed open. It takes another step toward the wreckage of the power truck. Every step crushes the once flat metal plates beneath it into scrap. That blue-purple glow flares up again. Not from electricity this time, but from the firelight seeping through its skin. Its enormous metal fist swings upward, ripping the heavy railgun crane from the ceiling. The crane crashes down with a deafening boom, shaking the foundations of the testing grounds. Amid the rubble and wreckage, it moves like a monstrous tin demon straight out of hell, step by step, closing in on the pile of still smoldering scrap. I can't let it move again. I scrambled up from the corner, clutching the last small bundle of explosives in my hand. The charge was taped to a broken steel rod. I watched its towering silhouette as it gathered scattered metal fragments into a pile. It was trying to repair itself. Black, glue-like ooze seeped from its joints, welding scrap metal to its body. It was transforming into an even larger metallic monstrosity. I sprinted forward, past smoldering circuit boards. My boots crunched over jagged debris, metal shards piercing the soles with every step. But I barely felt it. My focus was locked on the single vulnerable gap in its neck armor, a crack exposed by an earlier electrical surge. As I closed in, the thing sensed me. It whirled around, its massive metal hand swinging toward my head. I ducked, and the blow obliterated a brick wall beside me. Dust and debris rained down, but I didn't stop. I lunged upward, driving the explosive-tipped rod deep into the fissure in its neck. The charge was wedged in tight. The creature let out a piercing shriek like 1,000 armored beetles grinding their jaws at once. Its massive hand swiped back at me, but I grabbed one of its iron tendrils and used the momentum to roll clear. The explosion erupted. A blinding white flash burst from its neck, followed by a deafening boom. A chunk of its armor tore free, slamming into the wall behind it and punching a gaping hole. Thick, blue-purple smoke and molten, slag-like fluid spewed from the wound. The monster staggered, its colossal frame tilting backward, but it didn't fall. Its scissor-like back limbs stabbed into the ground, bracing its weight. It steadied itself, its eyeless face turning toward me. I stared back, drawing my last flare gun. The thing swung its mangled hand at me, a whip-fast strike I couldn't dodge. The impact sent me flying like a baseball, crashing into a distant pillar. The column snapped, its upper half collapsing and nearly crushing me. Gasping, I dragged myself from the wreckage, my mouth filled with the taste of blood. The monster loomed over me. It raised its jagged, saw-toothed hand, poised to crush my skull. I lifted the flare gun, aimed at the row of tiny vents in its face and fired. The flare streaked in with a trail of red light, lodging deep inside its head. Bang! An internal detonation split its armored skull like a shattered melon. Scorching metal splattered everywhere, some burning through my vest on contact. The creature let out one final, ear-splitting scream, shattering every remaining window in the vicinity. Its massive body finally toppled backward, collapsing like a crumbling building. Smoldering wreckage and ooze splattered across the ground, kicking up a cloud of dust. I lay there, watching its twitching form. It wasn't dead yet. Its scissor limbs thrashed, gouging deep trenches in the floor. Its remaining hand clawed wildly, tearing chunks from the concrete. I dragged myself backward, my injured arm screaming in protest. The thing kept convulsing, each spasm rattling the surrounding debris. The structure was coming apart. Overhead lights exploded one by one, showering sparks. More black ooze bubbled beneath it, trying to knit its shattered plating back together. It was still trying to rebuild itself. I couldn't let that happen. My gaze locked onto the half-intact hydraulic press nearby. Summoning the last of my strength, I grabbed a broken steel rod and hooked a tangle of severed cables, yanking them beneath the press. Then, with everything I had left, I hauled down on the machine's lever. The massive hammer groaned as it descended. The monster thrashed violently, sensing the impending crush. Its scissor limbs stabbed into the press's base, straining to lift it. The motor whined under the strain, the entire floor trembling. I threw my full weight onto the lever, but the thing's strength was monstrous. It was lifting the entire machine off the ground. The sparks from the metal friction illuminated both me and it in a deep red glow. We were locked in a tug-of-war. Its strength grew increasingly fierce, the machine emitting a creaking sound as if on the verge of collapse. I watched its hand, that jagged, serrated iron hand, slowly emerging from the wreckage, reaching to grasp the heavy hammer of the press. Gritting my teeth, I pulled the lever down a little further. With a thunderous crash, the hammer came down. In that instant, the world seemed to freeze. Its still open body, along with the heap of shattered metal still steaming with heat, was slammed onto the base by the press. The deafening impact left only a ringing in my ears. The thing let out one final grotesque noise, not a scream, but more like the mournful wail of metal shattering completely. I collapsed to the ground. The press didn't stop. I held the lever down with all my strength, keeping the pressure on. Amid the metallic groans of deformation, the creature's struggles finally ceased entirely. That relentless noise, that earth-shaking force, all of it was snuffed out in that moment. Dust settled slowly, leaving the testing grounds eerily silent. Only the hum of the press motor remained, along with the crackling of small fires ignited by stray sparks. I stared at the flattened heap of metal mixed with reddish-brown fluid, at the pile of motionless scrap. I didn't even have the strength to lift my hand. That thing was finally dead. No more unsettling vibrations from the wreckage. No more sensation of slime growing. This place had become nothing but a junkyard. As I looked at the crushed metal, an indescribable exhaustion washed over me. Everything that had just happened felt like a fever dream. I fished a crumpled cigarette from my pocket and stuck it between my lips. Even though my lighter was gone, I stared at the holes in the ceiling, at the faint light seeping in from outside. I lay there, right in the middle of the wreckage, waiting for rescue, waiting for it all to be over. My protective suit was smeared with dark red stains. What passed for the thing's blood splattered haphazardly across my clothes. I didn't have the energy to care. All I knew was that the thing would never move again. This multi-million-dollar railgun had sent the monster straight to hell. And in the midst of this test, among the shattered metal, I'd somehow survived. I watched the press hammer, still pressing down relentlessly, grinding out the last remnants of the creature's existence. Outside, dawn was breaking. The faint light spilled into the testing grounds, casting itself over the twisted metal frames and the pools of still damp slime. I closed my eyes and tossed the steel rod aside. It clattered to the ground with a sharp, satisfying sound, one that felt oddly comforting now. Finally, I could rest, even if just for a moment. This testing site, this wreckage, that now crushed metal monster, none of it mattered anymore. All I hoped was that I'd never have to see something like that again. Just the thought of it made the pressure return, weighing on my chest. I lay there, listening to the hurried footsteps approaching in the distance. I knew help was coming, but right now, I didn't want to move. I just wanted to stay here, in the middle of this scrap heap, and keep lying here, until they carried me out. Until they hauled away the wreckage. Then this whole nightmare would truly be over. That thing, that damned monster, was now nothing more than an unrecognizable pile of junk. Its destructive force, its suffocating presence, all of it had ended with that final impact. I exhaled deeply, watching the press hammer gleam coldly in the dim light. This maddening farce was finally finished. The chaos strewn across the floor was all it had left behind. No legends, no unsolved mysteries, just this flattened, cooled, lifeless heap of scrap metal. This was its end. And ours too. I didn't look back. I just waited for the rescue team to burst in and seal this place off for good. Because I knew no one would ever want to come here again. The stench of scorched metal, that choking odor, would linger in these ruins forever. A reminder to anyone who stepped inside of what had happened here. I didn't care anymore. I just wanted to sleep. A deep, dreamless sleep. Even if I never woke up, it wouldn't matter. Because the moment I did, the memory of that eyeless face would send chills down my spine. This was the final end. Here, in this pile of scrap, among the metal shards, everything had been decided. I turned my head, staring at the last flicker of dying red light beside the press. I knew it was really gone. Completely gone. The rescue team arrived and pulled each of us out of the wreckage. I sat on the stretcher, covered in dust, my gas mask shattered beyond recognition, revealing my scarred face beneath. My left arm hung limp-fractured from the earlier impact. A medic approached and injected something into my arm. I didn't flinch, just stared blankly as they worked. The testing site was littered with black, viscous fluid. It hadn't dried yet, oozing from the base of the hydraulic press. Scattered across the ground were white, rock-hard chunks debris from the creature's body. They looked like bone but felt denser than stone, rust-red stains marring their surfaces. Beneath the press's hammer, the amalgamation of metal and organic matter had been flattened into a paper-thin imprint, desiccated and lifeless. The wreckage of the railgun still crackled with sparks. Electricity danced across pools of black sludge, snapping and hissing. The walls bore deep gouges, each one carved several centimeters into the concrete. A blackened shard clung to my boot, likely a piece of its hide, now cold and indistinguishable from scrap metal. They loaded me onto the stretcher. I took one last look at the wreckage. The press still leaked a reddish-brown fluid, pooling into the sand and staining it dark crimson. As the medics wheeled me away, I didn't glance back. I never wanted to see this place again. The testing site's doors clanged shut behind me. Lying on the stretcher, I stared at the sky outside. The wind carried the scent of rust. I buried my face in the blanket and closed my eyes. This was the end. It was over.